Hello and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I'm your host, Amanda Rosani, and with me today, I'm excited to have the CEO of Elsight, Yoav Amitai. How are you?
Hi, Amanda. I'm great. Thank you for having me and great to be here.
Happy to have you on the show. Can you share a little bit about yourself and Elsight? What does this company provide?
I remember myself as a builder since I was a kid, basically playing with different type of toys, which are not necessarily toys, by building a different stuff from it. And today, exciting to lead Elsight in our path to change some very super interesting industries that I assume we will talk about in today's podcast. That's a little bit about myself, coming from engineering background. And pretty early in my career moved to the more to the business side, which for me was more compelling. But a person needs to choose his or her role in life. So that's the path I took. And about Elsight, Elsight is a communication company. That's our background. That's what we're coming from. So networking, doing mainly wireless communication in different areas and different segments in a very high level. And again, I assume we will deep dive into it, but today or in the last 6 years, we are focused on the uncrewed industry, which include ground vehicles, aerial vehicles, sometimes even maritime vehicles, believe it or not. Those that are traveling around us sometimes in some places in some parts of the world. And we are in charge, or we took the challenge of making sure that those platforms will be connected all the time to promote their security, to promote their safety, and to promote their scalability, basically. So that's in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we're going to be talking a lot about this, especially in drones. I think we'll start there. We hear a lot about beyond the visual line of sight. What does
Right.
that actually mean? Can you break that down a little bit and the importance of that to drone operations?
Sure. So assuming we will use these terms a lot, let's agree together that we will use BVLOS for our listeners, and for ourselves, it will just be faster than saying beyond visual line of sight every time we want to mention it. So BVLOS, it's have different definition in different parts of the world, in different regulatory environment or civil aviation authorities. Generally speaking, it's defining the distance between the operator and the actual platform, so the drone or the fixed wing or whatever is flying out there. That's one. And in some parts of the world, it's not only about the distance between the operator and the platform, but also how many different platforms a single operator can operate. So for example, in the US, even if you're operating the drone in 15 meters from you, but you are a single operator that operates two drones or three drones, that's already BVLOS. And it's not necessarily the the definition of beyond visual line of sight. That's a very clear definition of after, it depends again on the region, but let's call it around 3 to 5 miles beyond between the operator and the drone. That's already BVLOS, whether you see it or not. That's how the regulatory frameworks define it. So those are the two main points basically. How many platforms single is operating, and what is the distance between the operator and the platform?
Okay, great. So let's talk about reliable connectivity. What are some of the challenges of continuous reliable connectivity with these machines, especially in urban or remote environments?
Right. So think about, let's start with just standard communication that all of us have in our packets, in our phones, mobile phones, smartphones. And when you are driving from home to office or from home to shopping mall or whatever, some of us have sometimes Zoom calls even in the car while we're driving without video, of course, just voiceover. But it's happened so many times that the communication is not reliable enough, so the call will hang up or will disconnect or something like that, which is not that big of an issue. As human beings, we will disconnect the call, recall again after a minute or two or a couple of seconds, depends when we have the network back, and all good. The problem is that with those systems, think about a drone delivery application or grid line inspection application or healthcare services or drone as the first responders for police forces or ambulances or fire departments. For those systems, downtime, meaning sometimes game over, it means that they will not be able to perform or complete their mission. So that's how important is the communication for those kind of applications. That's basically create makes it mission critical communication because you must have the communication to complete the mission or to complete the task that these platforms need to complete. So that's how important it is. And the challenge there is exactly what I said. You want to have a constant communication with the platform. Try to imagine you and the listeners, try to imagine a situation when you are operating a drone distance apart from you. Doesn't matter what the distance is. You don't see it in your own eyes because it's behind a building, because it's whatever, long distance, you name it. And all of a sudden you lose communication like you just had on your phone call that we were talking about. That's a disaster because you don't know where it is, you don't know what's going on with it, and you are like, oh my God, I'm disconnected, and what's going to happen next? And this is why communication is this big of a challenge. And with today's, let's call it traditional communication methods, none of them, all of them are great for specific use cases, but none of them is ultimate to create the ultra robust or always on communication. And what, again, like I said in the opening, the challenge we took upon ourselves is to create what we call connection confidence, making sure that the operator will have this confidence of being connected over multiple type of networks, multiple type of spectrum frequencies, and so on to create it as robust as possible.
Wonderful. So, can you share some use cases where this is important, that continuous hybrid connectivity?
Of course, I'm thinking where to start. So basically, on every autonomous or remote controlled mission, communication is an issue or is a critical element by the regulatory framework, starting from that. So from the Civil Aviation Authority, they want, if it's the FAA or CASA or EASA or you name it, yeah, you name those are all names of civil aviation authorities. They want the operator or the control center to have constant monitoring of the platform. So you must be within the threshold of I have communication this and that percentage of the time. Depends again on the definition of the specific authority, but that's a basic requirement. On top of that, like I said, to perform the mission you want to perform, you need to have this communication. So it lies from last middle mile logistics for retail deliveries like Walmart deliveries, for example, or other kind of deliveries. Like we have customers who are doing it in Brazil, for example, doing some deliveries for McDonald's for their hamburgers or healthcare services between main hospital and regional hospital to transmit blood tests or different organs or stuff that needs to get on time, which the time is critical there. We have a very interesting use case in Poland actually that was for test between regional hospital and hospital for preborn babies to get their tests as fast as possible to the lab to know what's going on with them. And it used to take like 2.5 hours to get the test from the small hospital to the big one just because of roads and traffic and what have you. And now with a drone, they're doing it in 22 minutes, and that just reduced the time and makes it much more frequent and they can provide much better results. It's and those are just examples. I think one of or two of the most interesting use cases. One is power line and grid line and gas line inspection. Think about power line inspection now that needs to be inspected every time and time and again. And instead of sending full-size helicopter, which costs fortune and also puts people in danger because they need to get closer to the grids, now they can do it with either autonomous or remote control assets that just fly through those lines and can do it much more frequent and make it more safer, and so on. That's one. And another one which now takes the front stage, it's what's called DFR. It's drone as a first responder. With today's Part 108, we can talk about it in the US. The FAA just announced recently the new Part 108, which will help a lot of BVLOS enablement, beyond visual line of sight enablements in many different sectors. And drone is the first responder with the idea of having drones inside boxes around the city, whatever the city is. And now when they have 911 call, they will have in 45 seconds, they will have drone in the air taking a full real-time image of the scene and will transmit it back to the operator which can dictate if they're going to send intervention team, if they're going to send police vehicle, whatever needs to be done. So that's just the way, change the many way of how PDs, how police departments will do their work and can, again, save people, time, efforts, resources, and so on. And those are just four examples that I gave out of so many.
Yeah, I'm sure there's hundreds more. Those are very impactful examples. It's kind of
Mhm.
amazing what's so important to the connectivity that we don't always think about and take for granted.
Yeah, so connectivity, I always say to our employees, our team, to the customers we were talking with, partners and so on, that we took the challenge of communication, which basically, if it works, nobody will call us and say, well done, it works perfectly, because it should work. If it doesn't work, we will not sleep at night. Everyone will be on our line 24/7. So that's the nature of being in the communication business, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. Well, as we know, this technology is rapidly advancing, and as we move more to the BVLOS, what do you see as far as global policy and regulation? How will it be adapting?
So starting maybe with the unit economics of the drone ecosystem in general, looking broadly, I think that only if this industry will be able to do safe, secure, reliable BVLOS mission, that's the only business viability of this ecosystem. Because if it will remain single operator operating single drone within line of sight, it just doesn't make a lot of economical sense. Because think about deliveries, for example, this industry competing with a guy on a scooter that costs $8 to $10 to perform a delivery. So BVLOS will allow those drones to be at higher scale and do it faster and reduce the cost per delivery for all of us when you are getting our goods, our food deliveries, our whatever. So that's just to start with why BVLOS is so important. Getting back to your points that you just raised, I think that we are starting to see development there, and how both regulatory authorities are starting to shape the legislation and rulemaking and where or what is required to perform BVLOS mission. And we see it in different parts of the world, by the way. I just gave the example of the Part 108 from the FAA, but I can speak to other examples as well from different parts of the world. So we do see this program, companies who are building to scale those things in very involvement there. I do believe that we will start to see more rapid growth there, but we need to be patient because, I always give the comparison for the automotive industries in 1860, which took some time. I mean, people say those guys are crazy. We have horses. Why do we need cars? I mean, who need cars when you have horses? That was 150 years ago. And now we are a bunch of crazy people who say, why do we need something to be delivered in car if it can be delivered over the air much quicker, much cheaper, much safer, much greener, and so on. So that's where we at as an industry, and it's on us.
So, with all the back and forth communications between drones and different machines, how can we be sure that the data is safe and secure?
That's part of what we do. So I would say that in general, every networking communication device also need to take care about that. I would say that Elsight's role within this challenge or within this mission is to make sure that data is secure while it's in the air. So making sure that, and I can get into all the mechanics of how exactly we're doing that. By the way, we're not consider ourselves as a cyber product, but we are looking a lot on the security of the data and its inherent or built-in part of the product, which is part of, by the way, it's part of the advantages of the product that we have built in because of the way we're doing the communication or what we do. So it's inherent part there. We can, I was about to say we can assure. I would never say we can assure, because cyber is, or in general, threats is a constant chicken and egg game. But I would say that today, I think this is the most secure way to deliver data over public infrastructure because of the way of how we're doing that and making sure that in the air it will be secure and won't be manipulated in any way or in any manner. So that's part of built-in part of what we're doing.
All right. Well, looking ahead, where do you see the future of autonomous aerial drones?
Um, I think so. I'll start from trying to, for those of our listeners that in some way are afraid that there will be a day that will come. We will look to the blue sky and it will be covered with drone all over. I would guesstimate that that's not going to happen. Just like we don't have vehicles driving anywhere, we have roads, we have traffic rules, we have some measures of regulation that defines it. I think that will be the case. I 100% believe and see, being part of this industry for the last 5, 6 years, like I said, I definitely see the progress that is happening, how it's become more and more safer, how it's become more and more scalable and robust. And I definitely think that this new infrastructure, let's call it, so I always say that if the internet changed the way we're doing our digital infrastructure, so it's obvious for us that we're doing this call over Zoom now or recording this over the net without any issues. I think that the autonomous infrastructure in general, by the way, that's in the air and the ground, but all of it collectively, that will be the physical infrastructure that will change the way we're doing a lot of stuff. Sometimes we'll change the way we commute, the way we're getting our deliveries, the way our police departments are doing their work, the way, et cetera, et cetera. So it will just be a massive change for the good in the way we're living our lives. So it's super interesting for us to be part of this development and part of this crazy people, like I said before, that are working on this issue.
Fantastic. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
Don't be afraid. If our audience are not very familiar with this space at all, I would say don't be afraid of it, embrace it and believe like we believe that this is going to change our life for the good in many different ways. And I try to give a couple of examples of how it's literally making our world a better place, which is kind of I don't have a better way to say that. I think that companies like Elsight who have the experience, have the maturity, prove that our product are um, well built and built for scale. We are, among others, many good companies and partners and even competitors. We are here to make sure that that will happen in the safest way. And I truly believe that this is happening in front of our eyes at the moment, and it will become an obvious for our children's, let alone our grandchildren's, that there is another utilized dimension in the world of the low altitudes that are doing different parts of our day to day. So that's the shortest I can give a takeaway.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you, Amanda. Great to be here, and thank you for all the listeners.
Yes. Thank you to our audience and share what was the most interesting to you in the comments. Have a great day.